Story number 1. The Faceless Wanderer. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I recall that eerie encounter in Yellowstone National Park. My name is Daniel Harper, and what was meant to be a routine patrol turned into an experience that shattered my understanding of reality and left me questioning everything I once believed. I had always loved the wilderness. Growing up in Montana, the sprawling landscapes and untamed beauty of nature were my sanctuary. Becoming a park ranger was more than a career choice, it was a calling. Yellowstone, with its geysers, vast forests, and diverse wildlife, was my pride and joy. I knew every trail, every ridge, and every hidden nook like the back of my hand. It was late October 2018, a time when the park transformed into a winter wonderland. The first snows blanketing the ground in pristine white. I was assigned to a night patrol in the Lamar Valley, an area renowned for its abundant wildlife and breathtaking vistas. The crisp night air was filled with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, the rustling of leaves, and the distant roar of the Yellowstone River. As I trekked along the familiar path, my flashlight cutting through the darkness, I felt a sense of calm wash over me. The solitude of the night was peaceful, a stark contrast to the bustling days filled with tourists and maintenance tasks. My radio crackled intermittently, the static a reminder of the isolation that came with night shifts. About halfway through my patrol, I decided to take a short break near a clearing overlooking a small pond. The moon was high, casting a silvery glow over the snow-covered landscape. I sat down on a rock, pulling out a thermos of coffee, savoring the warmth as I gazed into the still waters. It was moments like these that made me appreciate the beauty and tranquility of Yellowstone. Suddenly, a movement caught my eye. A figure stood at the edge of the clearing, partially obscured by the shadows of towering pines. At first, I thought it might be a deer or perhaps a lost hiker, but as I watched, the figure became more distinct. It was a man, dressed in what appeared to be a heavy winter coat. Standing motionless in the snow, curiosity piqued. I decided to approach. I stood up, my flashlight steady in my hand, and began to walk towards the figure. The crunch of my boots on the snow was the only sound breaking the silence. As I drew closer, the man remained still, his back to me, as if he didn't notice my presence. "Hey there," I called out, my voice echoing slightly in the crisp night air. "Do you need help?" The man didn't respond. I reached out a hand, unsure if he was in distress or simply lost. But as my fingers brushed the fabric of his coat, a chill ran down my spine. His hand was impossibly cold, the touch sending a shiver through my entire body. "Are you okay?" I asked again, more urgently this time. "Can I get you anything?" Slowly, I turned around, expecting to see his face contorted in pain or surprise. But instead, I was met with a horrifying sight. The man's face was completely blank, no eyes, no nose, no mouth. It was as if his features had been erased, leaving behind a smooth, featureless mask where his face should have been. I staggered back, my heart racing. What happened to you?" I stammered, trying to process the unnatural visage before me. The man didn't respond. He stood motionless, his blank face staring into the darkness of the night. An overwhelming sense of dread washed over me, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. I took a step back, but the man remained rooted to the spot. Suddenly, without warning, he began to move. Slowly, deliberately, he turned and began to walk away, his figure blending seamlessly into the shadows of the forest. I wanted to follow, to understand what was happening. But something held me back, a primal fear that told me to run. I turned and sprinted back to my patrol route, my mind racing with questions and fear. Was this some sort of elaborate prank? A hallucination brought on by fatigue and isolation? Or was there something more sinister at play? The rest of my patrol was a blur. My mind couldn't shake the image of the faceless man, his eerie stillness, and the unspoken message that lingered in the air. I reached the end of my route, my legs aching from the exertion, and radioed in to report the strange sighting. "Commander, I saw a man out by the clearing near the pond," I said, my voice shaky. But his face was completely blank, no features at all. There was a long pause before the commander responded. "Stay safe, Daniel. We'll send a team to investigate. Do not approach him again." I nodded. Though I knew the commander couldn't see me, I made my way back to the ranger station. The memory of the faceless man seared into my mind. That night, sleep eluded me as I replayed the encounter over and over, each time feeling a deeper sense of unease. The following day, I attempted to return to normal, but the encounter lingered like a shadow over everything I did. I shared my experience with my colleagues, who listened with a mix of skepticism and concern. Some dismissed it as a trick of the light or an overactive imagination, while others suggested that the isolation and stress of the job could lead to hallucinations. But the truth was, there was something undeniably real about what I had seen. The man had been there, standing in the snow with a face that defied explanation. And as days turned into weeks, I couldn't shake the feeling that I was being watched, that the faceless wanderer was still out there, lurking in the depths of the forest. One night, a week after the encounter, I received an urgent call from the commander. "Daniel, we've got a report from another ranger. He saw the same thing, the faceless man in the clearing." My blood ran cold. This wasn't an isolated incident. Whatever I had encountered was happening to others as well, spreading through the park like a dark omen. Determined to get to the bottom of it, I decided to conduct my own investigation, venturing into the clearing once more, armed with my flashlight, radio, and a determination born of fear. As I approached the clearing, the wind seemed to die down, the snow falling gently around me. The pond was still, reflecting the pale light of the moon. I waited, breath held, for the faceless man to appear again. Hours passed in silent anticipation, the only sounds being the soft crunch of snow beneath my boots and the distant calls of nocturnal animals. Just as I was beginning to doubt my sanity, a familiar figure emerged from the shadows. The faceless man stood at the edge of the clearing, his back to me once more. My heart pounded in my chest as I took a cautious step forward. "I need to know what's happening," I called out, my voice barely a whisper. The man remained still, his blank face devoid of any emotion or recognition. I reached out again, desperate for some form of communication. But before I could make contact, a sudden gust of wind swept through the clearing. The snow whipped around me, and the temperature plummeted, making it difficult to breathe. Without warning, the faceless man vanished, swallowed by the storm like a specter returning to the shadows. I stood there, stunned and shaken, the weight of his silent presence pressing down on me. It was then that I heard it, the faintest whisper of a song, a sorrowful melody carried on the wind, echoing through the trees. I knew then that the faceless wanderer was more than just a ghostly apparition. He was a harbinger of something ancient and malevolent, a spirit bound to Yellowstone's wild heart, testing those who dared to roam its depths. The song was a lament, a cry for help from a soul lost to the darkness of the forest. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the park's history, researching old legends and forgotten tales. I discovered that Yellowstone was home to many spirits, guardians of the wilderness who watched over the land and its inhabitants. The faceless man, according to local lore, was a protector who had lost his identity, becoming a vessel for the park's ancient magic and sorrow. He appeared to those who were lost, both physically and spiritually, guiding them back to balance or condemning them to eternal wandering. His blank face was a symbol of his loss, a reminder that some things in Yellowstone were beyond human understanding, bound by forces that defied logic and reason. As I pieced together the fragments of the legend, I realized that the faceless wanderer was a manifestation of the park's deep connection to nature and its untamed spirit. He was a sentinel, ensuring that those who entered Yellowstone respected its power and reverence, punishing those who did not. With this newfound understanding, I knew that the only way to confront him was to honor his presence and the legacy he represented. I organized a gathering with my fellow rangers, sharing the story of the faceless man and the ancient spirits of Yellowstone. Together, we decided to hold a ceremony of respect and remembrance, acknowledging the park's untamed beauty and the guardians who protected it. On the night of the ceremony, we gathered in the same clearing where I had first encountered the faceless wanderer. Lanterns were lit, casting a warm glow over the snow-covered ground. We shared stories of our own experiences, honoring the spirits of those who had passed and reaffirming our commitment to preserving the park's sanctity. As the ceremony reached its peak, the wind picked up, carrying the familiar sorrowful melody once more. The faceless man appeared, his presence now less menacing and more dignified. We stood in silent reverence, the noise of the storm softened by our collective respect. The man extended his hand towards us, his blank face now seeming to reflect a sense of acceptance rather than malice. "We honor you," I whispered, feeling a profound connection to the spirit before me. "We respect the balance you maintain." The faceless wanderer nodded slowly, his form beginning to shimmer in the lantern light. The song transformed from a mournful lament to a harmonious melody, the whispers of the lost souls blending into a symphony of peace. The tension in the air lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and unity. With a final, graceful gesture, the faceless man faded into the night, leaving behind a serene silence that spoke volumes. The storm had passed, and with it, the restless spirits found their peace. We stood there, humbled by the experience, knowing that we had forged a deeper bond with the land and its ancient guardians. In the days that followed, the strange occurrences in Yellowstone ceased, the faceless wanderer no longer appearing to patrol the night. The park returned to its tranquil state, the snowflakes falling gently and the wilderness humming with life. Our patrols became more purposeful, driven by a renewed sense of duty and respect for the park's mystical legacy. Years have passed since that transformative night, and the memory of the faceless wanderer remains a cherished part of our ranger lore. I continue to patrol Yellowstone with the same passion and dedication, always mindful of the balance between humanity and the untamed spirit of nature. The faceless man serves as a constant reminder that Yellowstone is more than just a beautiful landscape. It is a living, breathing entity with its own rules and guardians. Sometimes, when the wind rustles through the pines and the snow glistens under the moonlight, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure at the edge of my vision, a silent sentinel watching over us, ensuring that the balance remains unbroken. It serves as a comforting presence, a guardian who reminds us to honor and respect the wild heart of Yellowstone. And as I sit by the fireplace each Christmas, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold onto the lessons learned from that night. The magic of the season is fragile, easily overshadowed by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 2. Whispers in the Pines. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart racing, every time I think back to that eerie discovery deep within the Great Smoky Mountains. My name is Thomas Bennett, and what was supposed to be a routine patrol turned into an experience that forever changed my understanding of the darkness that lurks within nature's embrace. It was late October, the time when autumn leaves painted the forest in hues of orange and gold, and the air carried a crisp chill that signaled the impending winter. As a senior park ranger, I had spent years navigating the winding trails and hidden corners of the Smokies, but nothing could have prepared me for what I encountered that fateful evening. I had been assigned to the remote area near Clingman's Dome, a place known for its breathtaking views and dense, uncharted wilderness. The night was unusually calm, with only the sound of rustling leaves and the distant call of an owl breaking the silence. My patrol route had taken me deeper into the forest than usual, and as midnight approached, I decided to set up a temporary lookout near a small clearing. The clearing was surrounded by towering pines, their branches heavy with the remnants of autumn foliage. In the center stood an old, weathered tent, its fabric faded and frayed by countless seasons. What struck me as odd was that all the camping gear inside the tent was perfectly arranged. Chairs stacked neatly, a kettle suspended over a makeshift fire pit, and a single lantern glowing softly despite the absence of a flame. Curiosity piqued. I approached the tent cautiously, my flashlight cutting through the darkness. There were no signs of recent activity, no footprints in the fresh snow, no discarded items, nothing to suggest anyone had been here recently. Just an empty campsite, frozen in time. As I stood there, trying to make sense of the abandoned setup, a faint noise caught my attention. It was a soft, rhythmic tapping, like someone gently drumming on the tent fabric. My pulse quickened as I strained to listen, the sound growing slightly louder and more insistent. I decided to investigate further, stepping closer to the tent's entrance. The tapping stopped abruptly, leaving an oppressive silence in its wake. I called out, "Hello? Is anyone here?" My voice echoed through the still night, but there was no response, just the eerie silence of the forest, amplified by the vastness of the Smokies. Determined to uncover the mystery, I reached out and cautiously unzipped the tent flap. Inside, the campsite remained undisturbed, but there was an unsettling feeling that hung in the air, as if the place held secrets it wasn't willing to reveal. I began to search the area, looking for any clues that might explain the sudden abandonment. It was then that I noticed the footprints, large, distinct impressions in the snow leading away from the tent and disappearing into the dense forest. What was peculiar was that the footprints abruptly stopped about 50 yards into the woods, as if the person had vanished into thin air. No signs of a struggle, no indication of where they might have gone, just an empty path swallowed by the shadows of the trees. I felt a chill run down my spine, the hairs on the back of my neck standing on end. There was something off about this campsite, something that didn't sit right with my years of experience in the park. I decided to mark the location and report it to my superiors. But before I could retreat, a low, mournful wail echoed through the forest, sending shivers down my spine. The sound was unlike anything I had ever heard, half human, half animal, a haunting melody that seemed to pull me deeper into the woods. My rational mind struggled to process the noise, but my instincts screamed at me to flee. I grabbed my flashlight and started to back away, the eerie wail growing louder, more desperate. As I turned to leave, a figure emerged from the shadows, a man, or what appeared to be a man, standing at the edge of the clearing. His form was indistinct, almost ethereal, as if he were a ghostly apparition. I froze, unable to move as he began to approach, each step deliberate and slow. "Who are you?" I managed to ask, my voice barely a whisper. The figure stopped just a few feet away, and I could see that his face was obscured by darkness. But there was an undeniable sadness in his stance. He raised a hand, pointing deeper into the forest. "They never left," he murmured, his voice echoing the sorrowful wail I had heard earlier. Before I could respond, he turned and began to walk away, his form fading into the night as if he had never been there at all. I stood there, stunned and shaken, my mind racing to comprehend what I had just witnessed. The air around me felt heavy, the forest closing in with its secrets and shadows. I made my way back to my patrol car, every step feeling heavier than the last. The footprints, the faceless man, the mournful wail, it all felt like a puzzle I couldn't solve, a mystery that the Great Smoky Mountains were determined to keep hidden. I knew I had to report this, to let others know that something wasn't right in that remote clearing. The following day, I returned with backup, determined to get to the bottom of the mystery. We scoured the area, but the footprints remained incomplete. No sign of what had happened to the person who had set up the campsite. The abandoned gear was still there, untouched by time or nature, as if the campers had simply vanished into thin air. As we continued our search, another eerie occurrence unfolded. we began to hear the same mournful wails, coming from different parts of the forest, each one more desperate than the last. It was as if the spirits of the lost were reaching out, their voices carried by the wind to anyone who would listen. One of my fellow rangers, Mark, ventured deeper into the woods, following the sound of the wailing. Hours passed, and we received no word from him. Panic set in as we realized he was also caught in the storm's grasp, the forest concealing his presence like it did with the abandoned campsite. Desperate to find Mark, we redoubled our efforts, but the forest seemed to shift and change, the trails leading us in circles, trapping us within its dark embrace. The wails continued, a constant reminder that we were not alone, that the spirits of the Great Smoky Mountains were watching, waiting. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that haunting night lingered like a shadow over my soul. The Ranger Corps launched extensive searches, but Mark was never found. The abandoned campsite remained a ghostly reminder of the night we encountered the unknown, a testament to the mysteries that lay hidden within the depths of the forest. Years have passed since that tragic event, but the memory of the abandoned campsite and the faceless wanderer still haunt me. I still patrol the Great Smoky Mountains, hoping to uncover the truth behind the mystery. But the forest holds its secrets close, its whispers carried by the wind, a constant reminder that some places are best left undisturbed. Sometimes, on quiet nights when the wind is just right, I swear I can hear the mournful wails echoing through the trees, and I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the edge of a clearing, pointing into the darkness. It serves as a chilling reminder that the Great Smoky Mountains are more than just beautiful landscapes. They are realms of ancient spirits and untold stories, waiting for the unwary to stumble upon their sorrow. And as I sit by the fire each night, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of the holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that haunting encounter. The beauty of nature is intertwined with its darkness, and with respect, understanding, and caution, we can honor the spirits that dwell within and ensure that their whispers remain silent, preserved within the heart of the Great Smoky Mountains. Story number 3. Echoes from the Abyss. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I think back to that eerie encounter in Utah's Zion National Park. My name is Jack Morrison, and what was meant to be a routine night patrol turned into a nightmare that still haunts me to this day. The memory of that December night in 2012 lingers like a shadow, a chilling reminder of the thin line between the natural world and something far more sinister. Zion was my second home. As a park ranger, I had spent countless nights navigating its rugged terrains, ensuring the safety of its visitors, and preserving its breathtaking beauty. The majestic cliffs, serene valleys, and hidden caves were my domain, each with its own story etched into the very rocks. But nothing could have prepared me for the events that unfolded that fateful night. It was the end of the year, and the park was preparing for the winter season. Visitors had dwindled, leaving behind the tranquility that only the off-season could bring. On December 15th, I was assigned to patrol the Kalab Canyons, a remote area known for its stunning red rock formations and secluded caves. The air was crisp, and the first snowflakes of the season began to fall, coating the landscape in a pristine blanket of white. The sun had set hours before, and darkness enveloped the canyon like a suffocating shroud. I parked my truck at a designated overlook, the engine's hum fading into the silence of the night. Armed with my flashlight and radio, I set out on foot, the snow crunching beneath my boots with each step. The cold bit at my cheeks, but the warmth of my duty kept me moving forward. As I made my way along the trail, the moon cast an ethereal glow on the snow-covered ground, illuminating the path ahead. The forest was alive with the sounds of nocturnal creatures, owls hooting, foxes scurrying, and the distant call of a lone wolf. It was during these solitary moments that I felt most connected to the wilderness, a silent guardian amidst the untamed beauty of Zion. About halfway through my patrol, I decided to take a short break near a small clearing. I sat down on a fallen log, pulling my jacket tighter around me. The tranquility of the moment was interrupted by a hauntingly beautiful melody drifting through the air. It was a song unlike anything I had ever heard, melodic, sorrowful, and undeniably human. Curiosity piqued. I grabbed my flashlight and followed the sound, the beam cutting through the darkness as I ventured deeper into the forest. The song seemed to guide me, leading me towards a cluster of rocks that formed a natural entrance to a cave. My heart raced with a mix of excitement and unease. Caves in Zion were often home to hidden wonders, but they could also harbor dangers, both natural and supernatural. As I approached the cave entrance, the singing grew louder, the voice more distinct. It was clear now that the melody was coming from within the cave. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for whatever lay ahead. The last thing I expected was the song to stop abruptly as I neared the entrance. An eerie silence replaced the haunting melody, leaving me with an unsettling stillness. I stepped into the cave, the darkness swallowing me whole. My flashlight flickered as I navigated the narrow passageways. The walls cold and damp to the touch. The air was thick with moisture, and the faint scent of earth and stone filled my nostrils. As I ventured further, the cave opened up into a larger chamber, the ceiling arching high above me, supported by stalactites and stalagmites that glistened in the light. It was then that I saw him, a small, shadowy figure standing at the far end of the chamber. He was no taller than a child, his silhouette barely discernible against the darkness. His back was turned to me, and he seemed to be humming the same sorrowful tune that had lured me here. My instincts screamed at me to turn back, to leave this place and never return. But something compelled me to stay. "Hello," I called out, my voice echoing through the cavern. "Are you okay?" The figure paused, and for a moment, I thought he might respond. But then, as if snatched away by an unseen force, he turned to face me. What I saw, or rather, what I didn't see, sent chills down my spine. His face was completely blank, no eyes, no nose, no mouth, just a smooth, featureless surface where his features should have been. It was as if his identity had been erased, leaving behind a haunting void. I staggered back, my mind racing to comprehend the impossible sight before me. "Who are you?" I whispered, my voice trembling with fear and disbelief. The faceless figure remained silent, his presence both mesmerizing and terrifying. Without warning, he turned and began to walk towards me, his movements fluid and unnatural. Panic surged through me as I realized I was paralyzed with fear, unable to move or speak. Suddenly, the cave seemed to close in around me, the walls shifting and reshaping as if the very earth was alive. The air grew colder, my breath visible in the dim light. The faceless man reached out a hand towards me, and I felt a wave of dread wash over me, threatening to consume my very being. Before I could react, the chamber plunged into darkness, the cave's temperature dropping to unbearable levels. I felt an overwhelming sense of despair, as if the shadows themselves were pressing in on me, suffocating my hope. The last thing I saw was the faceless man dissolving into the darkness, his form fading like a mist before dawn. I stumbled out of the cave, the night air biting at my skin as I made my way back to the trail. The haunting silence was broken only by the howling wind and the distant sounds of the storm that had intensified during my disappearance. My radio crackled with static, but there was no response, no sign of anyone else patrolling the area. Exhausted and shaken, I returned to my truck, the memory of the faceless man etched into my mind like a scar. I sat there for hours, unable to shake the feeling that something was watching me, that the spirit of the cave had reached out to claim me as its own. The storm raged on, the snow piling higher against my vehicle, sealing me in a cocoon of isolation and fear. Days turned into weeks, and I struggled to come to terms with what I had experienced. The authorities dismissed my account as a product of exhaustion and the mind playing tricks during the storm. But deep down, I knew there was something more, something supernatural lurking within the depths of Zion. The faceless man was no mere apparition. He was a harbinger of doom, a spectral guardian ensuring that the secrets of the wilderness remained hidden. Determined to uncover the truth, I delved into the park's history, seeking answers in old ranger logs and forgotten tales. I discovered stories of disappearances and unexplained phenomena, all centered around that very cave I had ventured into. Legends spoke of a spirit, an entity bound to the cave, forever mourning the loss of his identity and seeking to erase those who dared to intrude. The more I learned, the more I realized that my encounter was part of a larger pattern, a cycle of tragedy and loss that had plagued Zion for generations. The faceless man was a tragic figure, a soul lost to the unforgiving wilderness, forever trapped in a state of limbo between life and death. His sorrow was a beacon, a call for help that drew unsuspecting souls into the depths of the cave, where they would become part of his eternal lament. Haunted by the knowledge I had uncovered, I made the difficult decision to leave the park, my spirit heavy with the weight of the secrets I now carried. But the memory of that night lingered, a constant reminder of the thin veil between our world and the spirits that roamed the wilderness. The faceless man became a symbol of the untamed nature that we sought to protect, a reminder that some mysteries were meant to remain unsolved. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the echoes of the faceless man's song still resonate in my dreams. Sometimes, when the wind whispers through the trees and the snow blankets the earth in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the edge of my vision, a silent guardian watching over me, ensuring that the balance between the natural and the supernatural remains unbroken. The Great Smoky Mountains, Zion, Yellowstone. The stories of spirits and lost souls are woven into the very fabric of these majestic landscapes. As a ranger, I understand the importance of respecting the wilderness and honoring its secrets. But my encounter with the faceless man taught me that some forces are beyond our understanding, their presence a reminder of the fragility of life and the enduring power of nature's mysteries. And as I sit by the fireplace each night, surrounded by the warmth of family and the comforting glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that chilling encounter. The magic of the wilderness is a delicate thing, easily disturbed by the echoes of the past. But with respect, understanding, and the strength of our bonds, we can honor the spirits that roam the forests and ensure that their stories are never forgotten, forever etched into the heart of the mountains. Story number 4. The Staircase in the Woods. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I think back to that eerie discovery deep within Shenandoah National Park. My name is Alex Thompson, and as a park ranger, I've seen my fair share of the wilderness's beauty and brutality. But nothing could have prepared me for the night I stumbled upon the old staircase, standing solitary among the towering pines like a relic from a forgotten past. It was late October, the time when autumn had fully claimed the landscape, painting the forest in vibrant hues of red, orange, and gold. The crisp air carried the scent of fallen leaves and the distant promise of winter. I was on my usual evening patrol, checking the northern trails that bordered the less frequented sections of the park. The sun had set hours ago, leaving behind a blanket of twilight that quickly gave way to darkness. The forest was unusually quiet that night, the usual chorus of crickets and nocturnal creatures silenced by the heavy canopy above. My flashlight beam cut through the inky blackness, revealing the familiar terrain I navigated so often. But as I ventured deeper into the woods, something felt off, an inexplicable tension that made the hairs on the back of my neck stand on end. Then, amidst the dense foliage, I saw it, an old, wooden staircase ascending into the darkness, nestled between two massive oak trees. It was unlike any structure I'd ever seen in the park. The steps were worn and uneven, clearly built long before modern trails and facilities were established. There was no sign of a building or any indication of where the staircase led. It stood there, an enigmatic presence, beckoning me to investigate. Curiosity piqued. I approached cautiously, my flashlight trembling slightly in my hand. The air around the staircase seemed to grow colder, the silence pressing in on me from all sides. I reached out a hand to touch the first step, feeling the rough texture of the aged wood beneath my fingers. As I prepared to climb, a sudden gust of wind rustled the leaves, and an overwhelming sense of foreboding washed over me. Probably just an old maintenance structure, I muttered to myself, trying to rationalize the strange sight. Nothing out of the ordinary. Ignoring the unease gnawing at me, I began to climb the staircase, each step creaking under my weight. The higher I ascended, the more isolated I felt, the forest around me fading into an impenetrable darkness. The staircase seemed to stretch infinitely upward, the end lost in shadows. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement at the top, just a trick of the light. I reached out, trying to steady my trembling hand. But before I could take another step, an invisible force grabbed me, pulling me back down with a strength that defied logic. My heart raced as I stumbled, barely managing to keep my footing. The pull was relentless, a silent command forcing me to retreat. Panic surged through me as I realized something was terribly wrong. I scrambled down the remaining steps, my breaths coming in ragged gasps. As I reached the bottom, the staircase seemed to pulse with a dark energy, the air thick with an unspoken menace. Without another thought, I turned and fled, my instincts urging me to put as much distance between myself and that cursed staircase as possible. I made it back to my patrol vehicle, slamming the door shut and locking it with shaky hands. My mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. Was it some kind of hallucination? A prank by fellow rangers? Or something far more sinister? The next day, I couldn't shake the image of the faceless staircase from my mind. Determined to find answers, I returned to the spot, hoping to uncover its origins. But when I arrived, the staircase was gone, vanished without a trace, as if it had never existed. I searched the surrounding area, but there was no sign of it anywhere. It was as if the forest had swallowed it whole, leaving behind only questions and an unsettling silence. Days turned into weeks, and the memory of that night lingered like a persistent shadow. I shared my experience with my colleagues, but most dismissed it as stress-induced paranoia or an overactive imagination. Yet, something deep within me refused to let go of the truth. I couldn't ignore the feeling that the staircase was a gateway to something dark, something that the park was desperate to keep hidden. One evening, as the first frost began to blanket the park, I decided to investigate further. Armed with my flashlight, camera, and a notebook, I ventured back into the heart of the woods, retracing my steps to where the staircase had stood. The forest was eerily silent, the snow muffling my footsteps and adding to the sense of isolation. As I reached the clearing, I felt a presence, a heavy, oppressive energy that seemed to press down on me. My flashlight beam scanned the area, but there was no sign of the staircase. Disappointed, I began to document the area, taking notes and capturing photos, determined to find any clue that might explain its sudden disappearance. But then, I heard it, the same haunting melody that had drawn me to the staircase the first time. It was a soft, sorrowful tune, carried by the wind and echoing through the trees. My heart pounded as I followed the sound, the music leading me deeper into the wilderness. The melody was beautiful yet filled with an undeniable sadness, as if it were the cry of a lost soul. I followed the sound to a small, secluded glade, where an old, abandoned cabin stood. The structure was dilapidated, its windows broken and the door hanging loosely on its hinges. The melody seemed to emanate from within, pulling me towards it with an irresistible force. I approached cautiously, pushing the door open and stepping inside. The interior of the cabin was dark and musty, the remnants of past inhabitants scattered around, broken furniture, old photographs, and remnants of long-forgotten lives. In the center of the room stood a music box, intricately carved and beautifully decorated. It was the source of the haunting melody, playing a tune that seemed to resonate with the very soul of the forest. I reached out to touch the music box, my fingers trembling as I opened it. The gears inside were worn and rusted, but the melody continued, its sorrowful notes filling the room. As I watched, the music box began to glow with an ethereal light, and the temperature in the cabin dropped sharply, my breath visible in the frigid air. Suddenly, the ghostly figure of a woman appeared before me, her form translucent and shimmering. Her face was pale, her eyes hollow with an endless sadness, and her lips moved silently as she watched me with a longing that pierced my very being. "Help me," her voice echoed, a whisper carried by the wind. "Set me free." I stood frozen, unable to respond, as the apparition reached out a spectral hand towards me. A surge of energy coursed through me, pulling me towards the music box. The room seemed to warp and twist, the walls closing in as the sorrowful melody intensified. "I can't," I whispered, tears streaming down my face. "I don't know how." The ghostly woman's expression softened, her eyes filled with a tragic understanding. "Remember us," she pleaded. "Honor our memories. Only then can we find peace." With those words, the music box stopped, and the ethereal light faded, leaving the cabin in a profound silence. The oppressive energy lifted, replaced by a sense of calm and release. The apparition vanished, leaving me alone in the darkened cabin, the haunting melody a distant memory. I left the cabin with a heavy heart, the weight of the encounter pressing down on me. The staircase, the ghostly woman, and the abandoned cabin were all pieces of a larger puzzle, an unresolved story of loss and longing that the forest held tightly within its depths. Determined to honor the spirits I had encountered, I dedicated myself to uncovering the history of the area. I delved into old records, spoke with local historians, and pieced together the tragic tale of those who had vanished into the wilderness over the years. Many had been lost to the unforgiving nature of the park, their stories forgotten by time but not by the spirits that lingered. I organized memorials and remembrance events, ensuring that the memories of those lost were honored and kept alive. Slowly, the haunting melodies and ghostly apparitions ceased, the forest finding a balance between its natural beauty and the lingering spirits of the past. But sometimes, late at night, when the wind carries whispers through the trees and the snow blankets the ground in silence, I catch a glimpse of an old staircase glimmering in the moonlight, an illusion, perhaps, or a reminder that some mysteries are never fully solved. It serves as a chilling reminder that the wilderness holds secrets that are best respected, and that honoring the past is the key to finding peace in the present. And as I sit by the fire each night, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that haunting encounter. The magic of the wilderness is fragile, easily disrupted by the echoes of the past. But with respect, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 5. The Silent Guardian. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I think back to that harrowing experience in Yosemite National Park. My name is Michael Carter, and what was meant to be a routine investigation into a missing child turned into a nightmare that forever changed my understanding of the wilderness and the shadows it conceals. It was late October, a time when Yosemite's grandeur is at its peak, with autumn hues painting the landscape in vibrant reds, oranges, and yellows. The crisp air was filled with the scent of pine and the distant sound of rushing waterfalls. As a seasoned park ranger, I had spent countless hours patrolling the park's expansive trails, ensuring the safety of its visitors and preserving its natural beauty. But nothing could have prepared me for the case that landed on my desk that chilly morning. Ethan Miller, a 12-year-old boy, had gone missing 3 days ago while hiking with his family near the Mist Trail. Ethan was an adventurous kid, always eager to explore the trails and discover the secrets of the forest. His parents, Sarah and David Miller, were frantic, their worry palpable in every phone call and visit to the ranger station. When Ethan was found, He was disoriented and malnourished. His clothes tattered and soaked from the relentless rain that had pounded the park for days. He was barely coherent, mumbling incoherent words and staring blankly into the distance. It was clear he had been through an ordeal that left him traumatized and broken. As we sat down to interview him, Ethan clung to my hand, his eyes darting nervously around the small ranger station office. "I was lost," he whispered, his voice barely audible. "But I wasn't alone." Sarah held back tears, her eyes pleading for answers. "Ethan, where were you? What happened?" Ethan took a deep breath, trying to steady himself. "I met a friend in the forest. He took care of me." David leaned forward, concern etched on his face. "A friend? Who was this friend?" "Ethan?" Ethan hesitated, his small fingers tightening around mine. "He has gray skin, big eyes, and he never talks. He just watches over me." My mind raced as I absorbed his words. A gray-skinned, silent friend in the vast expanse of Yosemite's forest? It sounded like something out of a nightmare. But Ethan's terrified expression told me this was no hallucination. Determined to get to the bottom of this mystery, I decided to retrace Ethan's steps. With his parents' permission, I ventured into the forest, armed with my flashlight, GPS, and a deep sense of unease. The mist trail was a popular but challenging route, known for its breathtaking views and occasional encounters with wildlife. However, it was also easy to get lost, especially in the dense fog that often enveloped the area. As dusk settled and the shadows grew longer, I began to piece together Ethan's likely path. The rain had stopped, but the ground was still slick with mud, making progress slow and treacherous. The forest seemed to close in around me, the towering pines whispering secrets as the wind rustled through their branches. Every snap of a twig or rustle of leaves heightened my anxiety, the feeling of being watched gnawing at my nerves. Hours passed, and the temperature dropped, the first hints of winter creeping into the air. I reached a clearing near a small waterfall, the mist rising from the cascading water like spectral tendrils. It was here that Ethan had likely stopped to catch his breath, and I hoped to find some clue to his disappearance. The clearing was eerily quiet, the only sound being the gentle roar of the waterfall. I scanned the area, my flashlight beam cutting through the darkness. But there was no sign of Ethan or his mysterious friend. Just as I was about to give up hope, I heard it, a soft, melodic humming, almost like a lullaby, carried by the wind. I followed the sound, my heart pounding in my chest, until I came upon a secluded grove surrounded by ancient oaks. In the center stood an old, abandoned cabin, its wooden structure weathered by years of neglect. The humming was louder here, emanating from within the cabin's walls. Cautiously, I approached the cabin, my flashlight illuminating the path ahead. The door creaked open with a reluctant push, revealing a dimly lit interior. Dust particles danced in the beam of my light, and cobwebs adorned the corners of the room. It was clear that no one had lived here for years, but the presence of the humming suggested otherwise. I stepped inside, my eyes adjusting to the gloom. The air was thick with the scent of mold and decay, and the temperature dropped noticeably, sending a chill down my spine. The humming seemed to pulse with the rhythm of my own heartbeat, growing louder and more insistent as I moved deeper into the cabin. In the far corner of the room, I spotted something that made my blood run cold. A small, makeshift bed, neatly arranged with a blanket and a few scattered belongings. On the bed lay a figure, hunched over and motionless. As I approached, I realized it was Ethan, his face pale and eyes closed, as if he were in a deep sleep. Relief washed over me, but it was quickly replaced by confusion and concern. "Ethan," I called out, rushing to his side, but he didn't stir, his chest rising and falling in slow, shallow breaths. I checked his pulse. He was alive, but barely. It was clear he needed immediate medical attention. Suddenly, the humming ceased, plunging the cabin into an oppressive silence. I felt a presence behind me, a cold draft that sent shivers down my spine. Turning around, I came face to face with the friend Ethan had described, only now I saw him clearly. He stood at the edge of the room, his gray skin almost blending into the shadows, his large, unblinking eyes fixed on me with an intensity that was both unsettling and sorrowful. "Who are you?" I demanded, trying to keep my voice steady despite the fear clawing at my throat. The figure remained silent, his presence overwhelming. He took a step forward, and I could feel an invisible force pulling me towards him, making it difficult to resist. "Please," I whispered, struggling against the invisible grip. "Let him go." The friend extended a hand, not towards me, but towards Ethan on the bed. As if obeying an unseen command, Ethan began to stir, his eyes fluttering open and meeting the faceless gaze of the stranger. "Thank you," Ethan whispered, his voice weak but clear. Without warning, the figure vanished, and the oppressive atmosphere lifted, replaced by a profound sense of peace. Ethan sat up, tears streaming down his face, clutching my hand tightly. "He helped me survive," he said softly. "He never spoke, but he always knew what to do." We left the cabin together, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees as we made our way back to the trailhead. The forest seemed less menacing now, the shadows less threatening, as if the presence of the silent guardian had receded with the night. Back at the ranger station, Ethan's parents were waiting, their faces etched with relief and gratitude. As I recounted the events of that night, they listened in stunned silence, the horror and wonder in their eyes reflecting the complexities of our encounter. In the weeks that followed, Ethan gradually recovered from his ordeal, his spirit scarred but resilient. The story of the faceless friend spread through the park, a whispered legend among rangers and visitors alike. Some dismissed it as a figment of Ethan's traumatized mind, while others believed in the existence of spirits that watched over lost souls in the wilderness. But I knew what I had seen, the gray-skinned, silent guardian who had saved Ethan from the brink of death. There were more stories like ours, tales of mysterious apparitions and unexplained rescues, all pointing to the presence of something beyond our understanding, something that revered the natural balance and protected those who ventured too far into the depths of Yosemite. Years have passed since that December night, but the memory of the faceless guardian remains vivid in my mind. I continue to patrol the trails with a newfound respect for the mysteries that lie hidden within the park, always keeping an eye out for those who might need help and hoping that the spirits who watch over Yosemite remain benevolent. Sometimes, during the quiet hours of the night, I catch a glimpse of a gray figure standing among the trees, his large eyes watching me with a silent vigilance. It serves as a reminder that the wilderness holds secrets that are both beautiful and terrifying, and that respect and humility are essential when navigating its vast, untamed expanses. And as I sit by the fire each evening, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the stories we share, I hold on to the lessons learned from that chilling encounter. The magic of the forest is a delicate thing, easily disrupted by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been lost and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 6. Footsteps without shapes. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I recall that chilling encounter in Banff National Park. My name is Ethan Collins, and what was meant to be a routine evening patrol turned into a nightmare that forever altered my perception of the wilderness and the shadows it conceals. The memory of that night lingers like a ghost, haunting me with every step I take through the serene yet unforgiving landscape of Banff. Banff is a place of breathtaking beauty, where towering peaks pierce the sky and pristine lakes mirror the surrounding majesty. As a senior park ranger, I've spent countless hours navigating its rugged terrains, ensuring the safety of visitors, and preserving the natural splendor that draws people from all corners of the globe. But nothing could have prepared me for the eerie experience that unfolded one fateful evening in late October 2019. It was nearing dusk when I began my patrol, The autumn foliage had painted the forest in vibrant hues of red, orange, and gold, creating a picturesque scene that belied the impending darkness. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the distant promise of winter. As I walked along the familiar trail near Lake Louise, the tranquility of the evening wrapped around me like a comforting blanket. The sun was setting, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. The last rays of light glimmered on the snow-kissed ground, and the chirping of crickets began to fill the air as night approached. I was deep into my patrol, enjoying the solitude and the natural beauty that only Banff could offer, when I first heard it, a faint, rhythmic thudding that seemed to echo through the forest. At first, I dismissed it as the sound of a distant animal, perhaps a bear or a moose making its way through the underbrush. But as I continued my patrol, the thudding grew louder, more deliberate, and unmistakably human. My heart began to race as I slowed my pace, scanning the area with my flashlight. The forest was dense, the trees tall and imposing, making it difficult to see far ahead. The thudding stopped abruptly, leaving behind an oppressive silence that pressed in on me from all sides. I strained my ears, trying to catch any hint of movement, but there was nothing. Shaking off the unease, I continued my patrol, telling myself it was nothing more than the sounds of nature at dusk. But the feeling of being watched lingered, a prickling sensation at the base of my neck that refused to subside. I glanced over my shoulder, half expecting to see an animal or a fellow ranger. But there was no one. The trail was empty. The only signs of life, the rustling leaves and the occasional snap of a twig underfoot. As I reached a clearing near the edge of the forest, the thudding sound returned, louder and more insistent this time. It was as if someone or something was following me, matching my pace step for step. My pulse quickened, and I forced myself to remain calm, recalling my training to stay composed in the face of uncertainty. I turned around, flashlight beam piercing the darkness. But there was no one in sight. The clearing was bathed in the soft glow of moonlight, and the shadows seemed to shift and dance as if alive. My mind raced with possibilities, but nothing made sense. The footprints were another anomaly. Fresh, large footprints appeared in the snow right behind me, perfectly aligned with my own, though no one else was visible. Panic began to set in as I took a cautious step forward. Then another, each footprint leaving a distinct mark in the snow. The footprints matched the thudding rhythm, creating a silent rhythm that mimicked my own heartbeat. My training urged me to remain rational, to analyze the situation logically, but fear clouded my judgment. I decided to confront the source, to find out who or what was following me. Taking a deep breath, I began to walk towards the direction of the footprints, my flashlight cutting through the darkness like a beacon. The forest around me seemed to grow quieter, the usual nighttime sounds fading into an unnatural stillness. As I ventured deeper into the woods, the footprints led me to a small, secluded grove surrounded by ancient pines. The moonlight filtered through the canopy, casting eerie patterns on the snow-covered ground. In the center of the grove stood an old, dilapidated cabin, its wooden structure weathered by time and the harsh elements. The windows were broken, and the door hung loosely on its hinges, creaking softly with the wind. I approached the cabin cautiously, my flashlight beam illuminating the entrance. The thudding sound had ceased, replaced by an oppressive silence that made the air feel thick and heavy. I reached out to push the door open, my hand trembling with a mixture of fear and determination. As the door swung inward, a cold gust of wind greeted me, carrying with it a faint, sorrowful melody that seemed to emanate from within. Inside, the cabin was dimly lit by the moonlight streaming through the broken windows. The air was stale, filled with the scent of mold and decay. Dust particles danced in the beam of my flashlight, settling on the remnants of what once might have been a cozy living space. Broken furniture lay scattered around the room, and the remnants of a fire burned weakly in the stone fireplace, casting long, wavering shadows on the walls. As I stepped further into the cabin, the melody grew louder, more defined. It was a hauntingly beautiful tune, filled with sorrow and longing, as if the very walls of the cabin were singing their own lament. My flashlight flickered, and for a moment, I thought I saw movement at the far end of the room, an indistinct shape that quickly vanished as I approached. In the center of the cabin stood a large, old mirror, its glass cracked and tarnished. The reflection showed not just the cabin but the forest beyond, as if the mirror were a window into another world. The melody seemed to emanate from the mirror itself, the sound echoing off the walls and filling the room with an ethereal presence. I moved closer, drawn to the mirror by an inexplicable force. As I gazed into its depths, I saw not my own reflection but a figure standing behind me, a man with gray skin, large, empty eyes, and no discernible features on his face. He wore tattered clothing that seemed to blend seamlessly with the shadows, his form almost translucent against the moonlit backdrop. My heart raced as I turned around, expecting to see the faceless man standing beside me. But the cabin was empty. The figure remained in the mirror, watching me with an intensity that felt both haunting and sorrowful. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice barely above a whisper. The man didn't respond. Instead, he lifted his hand, pointing towards the forest beyond the cabin. The message was clear: he wanted me to follow, to uncover the truth hidden within the depths of the wilderness. I felt a cold chill run down my spine, a mix of fear and curiosity propelling me forward. Determined to find answers, I stepped away from the mirror and made my way back to the trail, the melody still echoing in my ears. The footprints had led me to this cabin. But where did they lead next? The man in the mirror had given me a direction, a silent plea for help that I couldn't ignore. As I walked back through the forest, the moonlight guiding my path, I felt an invisible presence watching me, the weight of unseen eyes pressing down on me. The silence was broken only by the crunch of my boots on the snow and the distant call of an owl. My mind raced with thoughts of what I might find, but the fear of the unknown kept me moving forward. Hours passed, and the darkness deepened, the forest becoming more oppressive with each step. The footprints no longer followed me, disappearing into the shadows as if swallowed by the night. Exhausted and disoriented, I stumbled upon a hidden trail that led deeper into the wilderness, the path barely visible beneath the thick blanket of snow. Following the trail, I reached a secluded valley surrounded by towering cliffs and dense forests. In the center stood an ancient stone altar, covered in moss and carved with intricate symbols that seemed to glow faintly in the moonlight. The sorrowful melody had ceased, replaced by an overwhelming sense of peace and melancholy. As I approached the altar, I felt a surge of emotion, sadness, loss, and an unspoken connection to the spirits that inhabited this sacred place. The symbols on the altar pulsed with an otherworldly energy, and I knew that this was the heart of the mystery, the source of the faceless man's sorrow. I knelt before the altar, placing a hand on the cold stone. "What do you want from me?" I whispered, tears welling up in my eyes. "How can I help you find peace?" A gentle breeze stirred, carrying with it the faint sound of the melody I had heard in the cabin. The symbols on the altar began to glow brighter, and the air around me shimmered with an ethereal light. I felt a presence enveloping me, a sense of being connected to something greater than myself. The faceless man appeared once more, his form materializing beside me in the reflection of the altar. Though his face remained blank, his eyes seemed to convey a deep sadness and longing. He reached out his hand, not in demand but in invitation, as if urging me to understand the pain that bound him to this place. I took a deep breath, feeling a sense of calm wash over me. "I will honor your memory," I vowed. "I will remember you and ensure that your story is told." The symbols on the altar glowed even brighter, and the melody returned, a harmonious blend of sorrow and hope. The faceless man began to fade, his form dissolving into the light as the energy from the altar enveloped him. "Thank you," the voices whispered, the echoes of lost souls finding peace as their stories were finally acknowledged. As the last of the light faded, The altar stood silent, the forest around me no longer feeling oppressive but serene. The footprints, the melody, the faceless man, all were part of a story that needed to be remembered. A reminder of the delicate balance between humanity and the spirits that dwell within the wilderness. I made my way back to the ranger station, the first light of dawn breaking through the trees, illuminating the snow-covered landscape. The memory of that night stayed with me, a testament to the mysteries that lie hidden in the heart of nature and the importance of honoring those who have been lost. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the lessons I learned remain etched in my soul. Banff National Park continues to welcome visitors from around the world, each drawn by its beauty and majesty. But those who listen closely on quiet nights might hear the faint echoes of a sorrowful melody, a reminder that the wilderness holds secrets that are both beautiful and terrifying. Sometimes, when the wind whispers through the pines and the snow blankets the ground in silence, I catch a glimpse of a shadowy figure standing at the edge of my vision, a silent guardian watching over me, ensuring that the balance between light and darkness remains unbroken. It serves as a haunting reminder that some mysteries are best left respected and that honoring the past is the key to finding peace in the present. And as I sit by the fire each evening, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that haunting encounter. The magic of the wilderness is fragile, easily disrupted by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek. Story number 7. Whispers in the Pines. I still wake up in the dead of night, heart pounding, every time I think back to that eerie discovery deep within Rocky Mountain National Park. My name is Jack Turner, and as a park ranger, I've spent countless hours navigating the rugged terrains, ensuring the safety of visitors, and preserving the natural beauty that draws people from all over the country. But nothing could have prepared me for the night we stumbled upon the mysterious wooden house that vanished without a trace. It was late October, the time when autumn had fully embraced the Rockies, painting the landscape in vibrant hues of red, orange, and gold. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of pine and the distant promise of the approaching winter. Our team of 5 rangers was conducting a routine patrol in a less-traveled section of the park, an area known for its dense forests and panoramic views but rarely visited by tourists. We had been trekking for hours, the trail winding through thick stands of lodgepole pines and along the edge of serene alpine lakes. The sun was beginning to dip behind the towering peaks, casting long shadows that danced among the trees. As dusk settled in, the forest seemed to grow quieter, the usual sounds of wildlife giving way to an almost oppressive silence. "Keep your eyes peeled," I reminded my team, my flashlight beam cutting through the growing darkness. "This area can be tricky, especially with the foliage making it harder to spot anything unusual." Sarah, our newest ranger, nodded earnestly. She had joined us just a few months ago, eager to prove herself in the demanding role. Tom, our seasoned leader, led the way with his steady gait, while Mike and Laura followed closely, their experience evident in their confident strides. As we ventured deeper into the woods, the trail became less distinct, the markers we relied on fading beneath the thick carpet of fallen leaves and twigs. It was then that Tom called out, his voice tinged with both excitement and confusion. "Hey, do you guys see that?" I turned to follow his gaze, squinting through the darkness. There, nestled among a cluster of ancient pines, stood a small wooden house. It was oddly out of place, its rustic charm contrasting sharply with the wild, untamed forest surrounding it. The structure was quaint, with a gabled roof and weathered siding. But what struck me most was the sheer lack of any visible path leading to it. No trail, no signs of recent activity, just an abandoned cabin seemingly materializing out of nowhere. "Where the hell did this come from?" Mike muttered, stepping closer to inspect the house. As we approached, the air grew colder, a chill that seemed to seep into our bones. The house appeared untouched by time, as if it had been abandoned decades ago. The windows were dark, but the front door was slightly ajar, swaying gently in the breeze. A feeling of unease settled over us, a sense that we were trespassing into something that didn't want to be disturbed. "Should we check it out?" Sarah asked, her voice wavering slightly. Tom hesitated, glancing around the group. "I say we take a look. There's something off about this place." We pushed the door open, the hinges creaking ominously. Inside, the house was dimly lit by the fading daylight filtering through the dusty windows. The furniture was old but well-maintained. A small table with mismatched chairs, and a fireplace that hadn't seen fire in years. It was eerily quiet, the only sound our footsteps echoing through the empty rooms. In the center of the living area stood a single rocking chair, gently swaying back and forth as if someone had just left it. The sight sent a shiver down my spine. "This is weird," I said, feeling the hairs on the back of my neck stand up. "There's no one here, but everything's so in place." Laura approached the chair cautiously, her hand reaching out to touch it. "It looks like someone was here recently, but there's no sign of them." Before we could discuss further, a loud bang echoed from upstairs, startling us all. We froze, exchanging nervous glances. "Probably just the wind," Mike suggested, though his voice lacked conviction. Tom nodded slowly, trying to steady his breathing. "Let's check it out. Stay close." We ascended the creaky wooden stairs, the beam of my flashlight illuminating the dark corridor. At the top, we found a small bedroom, the bed neatly made, and personal items scattered on a dresser. It was as if someone had vanished into thin air, leaving behind only their belongings. No signs of struggle, no clues as to where they might have gone. "Someone was here," I murmured, running my fingers over a framed photograph on the dresser. It was a family portrait, faded and worn, showing a man, a woman, and a young girl smiling happily together. But where are they? As we stood there, pondering the mystery, a sudden gust of wind blew through the open window, slamming the door shut with a deafening bang. The room plunged into darkness, the only light coming from the fading twilight outside. Panic set in as we realized we were trapped inside the abandoned house. "We need to get out of here," Sarah whispered, her eyes wide with fear. But as we turned to leave, the door refused to budge. The handle stuck as if held by an invisible force. "What's going on?" Mike demanded, pounding on the door. "Let us out." The rocking chair in the living room began to move on its own, the creaking sound echoing through the house. I felt a chill run down my spine, the air growing colder with each passing second. Shadows seemed to dance on the walls, forming fleeting shapes that vanished as quickly as they appeared. "We're not alone," Tom said, his voice barely above a whisper. "Something's here with us." Desperate to escape, we searched the room for another exit, but the only door led back to the hallway. It was then that I heard it, a soft, melancholic melody coming from the fireplace. The sound was hauntingly beautiful, filled with sorrow and longing, as if the house itself was singing a mournful tune. "Do you hear that?" Sarah asked, her voice trembling. "It's like someone's singing." I approached the fireplace cautiously, the music growing louder as I drew nearer. There, nestled among the ashes, was an old music box, its intricate design shimmering in the dim light. I reached out and picked it up, winding the key with trembling fingers. The melody continued, more intense and sorrowful than before, filling the room with an eerie presence. As the song played, the atmosphere in the house shifted. The temperature plummeted further, and the shadows deepened, coalescing into indistinct forms that hovered just beyond the edge of my vision. I felt an overwhelming sense of sadness and loss, as if the spirits of the past were reaching out to us, their presence both beautiful and terrifying. "We need to leave," Tom insisted, his eyes darting around the room. "Now." But the door remained stubbornly closed, the invisible force holding us captive. The rocking chair moved again, this time faster, as if someone was agitated. I felt a presence behind me, a cold breath on my neck, and turned to see a faint, ghostly figure standing in the doorway, a man, his face obscured by shadow, his eyes hollow and empty. "Who are you?" I demanded, my voice shaking. The figure didn't respond, but the sorrow in his gaze spoke volumes. He gestured towards the music box, his hand pointing to the melody that filled the room. It was a silent plea, a request for us to understand his pain and the story behind this abandoned house. Realizing that the music box held the key to the mystery, I took a deep breath and began to speak, recounting the history of the park and the legends of lost souls wandering the wilderness. As I spoke, the melody softened, the ghostly figure becoming less menacing and more sorrowful. It was as if our words were soothing the restless spirit, easing the tension that held us captive. "We're here to help," I continued, my voice steady despite the fear. "We want to honor your memory and ensure that your story is never forgotten." The shadows in the room began to recede, the oppressive atmosphere lifting as the music box wound down. The door to the hallway creaked open, the invisible force releasing its hold on us. The ghostly figure faded into the background, his sorrowful gaze now filled with gratitude. With a final, lingering glance, we made our way out of the house, the melody of the music box echoing in our minds. The once impossible door now swung freely, welcoming us back into the safety of the forest night. As we trudged back to our patrol route, the moon shone brightly above, casting a serene glow over the snow-covered landscape. The encounter had left us shaken, but also with a deep sense of respect for the spirits that inhabited these ancient woods. We had ventured into the unknown, faced the sorrow of the past, and emerged with a story that would forever bind us to the haunted house in Rocky Mountain National Park. In the days that followed, we shared our experience with fellow rangers and visitors, ensuring that the memory of the lost family and their silent guardian would not fade into oblivion. The abandoned house was never seen again, but the footprints left behind served as a lasting reminder of the night we encountered the supernatural forces that watch over these sacred lands. Years have passed since that fateful night, but the memory of the wooden house and the sorrowful spirits that dwelled within remains vivid in my mind. I continue to patrol the trails of Rocky Mountain National Park with a renewed sense of purpose, knowing that the wilderness holds secrets that are both beautiful and terrifying. The echoes of the past linger in the rustling leaves and the whispering winds, a constant reminder that some stories are meant to be remembered, honoring the delicate balance between life and death, nature and the supernatural. And as I sit by the fire each evening, surrounded by the warmth of my family and the glow of holiday lights, I hold on to the lessons learned from that chilling encounter. The magic of the forest is fragile, easily disrupted by the echoes of the past. But with love, understanding, and the strength of community bonds, we can honor those who have been forgotten and ensure that their spirits find the peace they so desperately seek.